Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Divergent discussion. I'm Michelle, and I'm the founder of Caboose. We're an inclusive, safe online community for neurodivergent people to connect, learn, and thrive your way. We're built by neurodivergent people for neurodivergent people. And just a reminder to everyone who's joining that we are recording this for our community members who can't join us live. We have a community all over the world, so we like to be able to share these discussions with those community members as well. We do have the chat open, so Riverside is a pretty neat little product. You can pop all your questions in the chat and I'll be monitoring that, and I know Beck will be keen to answer questions throughout or at the end. So that leads me into introducing my good friend, Rebecca McCash, who is an ADHD founder of FutureTech Australia. Beck has lived experience of neurodivergence, narcolepsy, which maybe we'll talk about, eating disorders, mental health challenges, and is regularly called upon to share her experiences and expertise in the design and delivery of programs, policy, and support for disabled people. Beck is a sought-after speaker at disability conferences and events and has spoken at high-profile events such as the United Nations World Autism Day panel, that is super cool, and Australia's premier Autistic Pride Day symposium. Rebecca is a member of Just Gold's Autistic Initiatives Advisory Board, member of Catalyst 2030, and now I'm going to get that wrong, SECNA, was a member of the Australian National Autism Strategy Oversight Council's Economic Inclusion Working Group. That's a big mouthful too. Rebecca has worked in the disability sector for a decade and is passionate for genuine co-design, creating learning environments that spark curiosity. She loves penguins, which, yes, I remember that from our many conversations. And yes, they're in the background there, and is challenging the status quo to build a better future for everyone. And I'm personally very proud to call Beck a friend. We've been having lots of conversations over the last few years about future tech and Caboose. And so it's a great opportunity for us to have Beck with us to talk all things well-being. So welcome, Beck.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I've often said that many of our kind of offline discussions should be recorded and shared with the world, Michelle, because there's always little nuggets of good knowledge there.
There is. Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of having just like an informal discussion, because it does take you down different pathways. And although we have an agenda of wellness tonight, wellness covers a lot of things, and I'm sure that we'll get taken down the rabbit hole a little, and maybe there'll be some cool questions from the audience as well.
That sounds great. Yeah.
So
Even reflecting today on how I feel like my own well-being strategies have all gone to the side recently, just because things have been so busy. So yeah, I guess I will share my strategies, but no expectation that these will work for everyone all of the time. They don't even work for me all of the time. And yeah, it's always nice to kind of revisit some of these things when things are feeling a little bit shaky. So I'm really glad for this opportunity.
I was thinking exactly the same today. I was like, it's sort of ironic to be hosting a wellness discussion tonight when it's been a very big week and it's only Wednesday. And so
It's just only Wednesday.
We're showing up a little tired, but it's only Wednesday, but it's hump day. So we are on the other side tomorrow, which is always a good thing. So when we talk about wellbeing for neurodivergent people, what does it actually mean beyond the standard definitions?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think well-being for neurodivergent people, it sometimes looks a little bit different from what others might expect well-being to look like. I think it goes a little bit beyond sort of the physical and like managing stress and things like that. For me, it's all about trying to live in ways that align with my sensory profile, with what works and doesn't work for me, and trying to build a life for myself that can cater to how I show up in the world. I guess a lot of the narrative is often around how to fix or change neurodivergent people so that we can fit into existing systems better, or, survive them anyway. But I think to achieve real well-being, there's a balance between I need to know myself intimately and be able to put things in place for myself, but also the environment and the wider kind of system and people around us also need to adapt and change. There's a little bit of sort of personal responsibility, a lot of that wider environment that really needs to shift so that we don't have to try quite as hard all of the time.
Mm, yeah. I like that comment about, understanding your own sort of sensory profile and what works for you with well-being sort of strategies. How do people kind of get a handle on that? Like, is it, you know, sitting with kind of a notebook reflection book? That doesn't always work for me, but do you have any tips on understanding your sensory profile?
I think a lot of it's trial and error. So I'm quite I've gotten better at being extremely deliberate about almost everything I do, not sort of being a passive observer in my own life, and just really noticing things and tuning in. Uh, so I actually had a practice of sitting down and thinking about, okay, what are the things that really lift me up? And what are my yums? Like, what are the yucks? What are the things that really I find challenging? And this isn't just the sensory world, it's also, social and interests and ways of thinking. But with the sensory side of things, really just thinking about it, going through all of the different senses and writing it down so that it wasn't just in my head, and I could actually refer
Mm,
back to that later down the track and go, oh, okay, actually this was really, really challenging for me. And that then leads into the ability to be able to self-advocate and ask for things that we need as well. So yeah, I think that you do need to just sit down and actually, yeah, a notebook's great. Anything that you can just jot some ideas down on, because oftentimes we don't think about what is challenging or what is really good for us until we're in that moment and we're already overwhelmed, or we're already kind of lacking something that we really, really need. And then by that
mm,
moment, you are the worst person to sort of remember that and then kind of put it into practice later down the track.
exactly.
So, yeah, being really, really deliberate, really proactive. I always say that for every yuck, you need at least two yums. So
I love
it's
that.
yeah, so it's kind of like a balance. I really love like spoon theory for well-being. So the idea that you have a limited amount of energy and you have to allocate it quite deliberately to ensure that you have any left over at the end, or enough to do everything you need to do. Whereas I think for neurodivergent people, it's the picture's more like you're on a unicycle going down a tightrope, and you've got two weights in each hand, and you've got to keep balanced. And the yucks are on one side, and the yums are on the other side, and you're just spinning spoons out the back like there's nothing of them, because a lot of people forget that actually the yums take energy too. It's not just that sitting down and indulging in a special interest or being able to do those healing things don't cost energy. You need to ensure that you have enough left
Mm.
over for those things so that you can heal faster and get back on the unicycle the next day.
Get those spoons happening.
Forks, knives, anything. Whatever you can
Yes,
find.
anything. And I do like that sort of that concept, the spoon theory, and also like just thinking about like that energy bank, I suppose, whatever you spend, you kind of have to save up again. You can't just keep spending it. When you think about well-being, I mean, it's talked about, in community, in workplaces, in families. Are there sort of aspects of well-being that you think are overlooked generally in the neurodivergent context?
Definitely, lots. I think one of the main ones that's often overlooked is joy and fun. We often don't see fun and feeling joy as an outcome of a program or initiative or anything in relation to neurodivergent people. And I'm not sure why, because joy and fun are sort of the core of what is good in life. And so I'd love to see a little bit more focus on just like, it's okay if the outcome is that people are having fun. Like, that is really important too. It's not just about getting a job or getting
Mm.
this or that. It's also about just knowing what you're interested in, knowing what gives you joy. It's all part of that sort of developing a really good sense of yourself and what works for you. And so why don't we focus more on fun and joy? I also think
So
that
good. I like that.
yeah, yeah. I also think that there's a lot of young people that are going through school and they are sort of not finding that joy, not finding that fun, not finding those interests. And that's another thing that I think is such a protective factor for neurodivergent people, being able to one, well, know what your interests are, but also just being able to indulge in them and have that sort of insatiable curiosity about that thing. That is my number one go to whenever I'm feeling not so great. It's what can I learn about my interests? What documentaries are on
Mm.
about sharks, for example, or penguins that I can sit and watch. And, that's really, really healing for me. And without that, like, gosh, and so I think a lot of environments are sort of missing the mark there, where, too
Mm.
many young people are developing almost like a trauma response to learning as a sort of concept, and that is so unbelievably dangerous because I don't know what I would do
Mm.
without my interests to sort of refill my cup back up again when it's been completely depleted. So those are two things
Mm.
that I think are really overlooked. And the third thing I think is arming people with tools and strategies to support themselves. So I think in a lot of settings, people will do things for, or you might go to a therapy setting and someone says to you, hey, like, have you thought about organizing your calendar more or something like that? And for a neurodivergent person to hear that, it, it it's almost like because you don't understand why it's helpful, it's really, really hard to then put it into practice and understand what the value of it is. Whereas for me, I know that if I'm disorganized, I'm overwhelmed. And that's why I make sure that I'm
Mm.
organized because that reduces how overwhelmed that I feel. It's not just, to be organized, it's also to be in a better state of well-being as well. Being able to, yeah, arm
Mm.
people with tools and strategies, things like wearing headphones, things like sunglasses, all of these things are tools for people not to kind of avoid, but to be able to cope better with the world. I've had a few experiences where people have sort of pushed back on this and said, but they have to go out into the world at some stage. And so you need to be able to cope and manage without the supports. And for me, I just think, well,
Mm.
being able to arm people with the tools and strategies and the knowledge of how to take care of themselves, and that it's okay if they have to have an entire day in bed after a big event, or that just having a shower is good enough for today as a goal. Like, that's okay. That's how we
Mm.
stay standing for longer and not keep sort of crashing into those recurrent, really, really deep burnout periods, which just takes so long to heal from.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting about the joy piece. I remember reading something quite a few months ago now about joy, and I really like that idea that in wellness programs there could be should be an element of joy because I think, I guess as neurodivergent individuals and even, I know as a parent of neurodivergent kiddos as well, you're quite often managing, you know, dysregulation or you're managing a sensory overload or you're managing something and to bring wellness back to even a joyful activity or, a spin or something like that, you kind of go, yeah, that it's sort of almost common sense, isn't it? That actually joy sits in wellness of neurodivergent. Mm.
Definitely, definitely. And like, why is that not enough? Why is it not enough that someone is experiencing fun and joy? Um, Yeah, it's interesting when you try to pick apart the little things that give you that joy. And so a lot of my like if I'm having a really rough day, I'll make sure that I have little things around me that just make me a little bit more joyful for a second. So I've got my penguins, like I have paintings and color around. So all of these tiny little things in my environment. Hi, Hugo. Hugo's a big one.
Yeah.
He is like my number one. I'll just sit down and have a cuddle with him some days because I'm just like, I need that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see greater emphasis on joy because like we deserve to experience joy.
Mm.
Also goal setting. This is something I've been thinking about recently quite deeply.
Mhm.
We often see goals for not just neurodivergent people, disabled people in general, um, around things like my goal is to improve my social skills, or my goal is to improve my emotional regulation. And I think I go, okay, but where's the joy in that? Like,
Yes,
well,
that's right.
it's like your goal isn't the person's goal isn't to improve their social skills. Their goal is to make a friend. And in the process of making that friend, there are skills that they will develop and, have to work through and work on to achieve the goal of making a friend. But the goal isn't to improve social skills. That's not a
Mhm.
goal. That's just I don't even know. Like it's like who
I
gets
love
excited about
that, to make a friend. Yeah, that's right. That a
that?
goal to make a friend is so good. I had a coaching session with one of our community this week, and her goal was something along the lines of finding joy in work. Like, and what would that be, rather than just get a job because my parents or, my community or the world thinks I should have a job. It's actually finding joy in something that gives her meaning and purpose. So I love that sort of connection there to joy. And I like the idea of that sort of that, you know, equipping people with tools, but I wonder how, as a neurodivergent person, do we identify and then communicate, you know, these wellness needs or well-being needs, and so that we're actually accessing the right tools?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's tricky because one of the things that for me anyway, I really struggle with interoception. So sort of being able to pick up on my internal system. So even things like I feel really overwhelmed or I'm tired or I need to eat, all of these things for me get a little bit lost in the translation between my body and my brain, which means that it can be hard to know what things help or what things might help. And again, that's why really sitting down and being super deliberate about thinking about it and mapping it out was the only thing that would work for me anyway, because I need to do that not in a moment where I'm already overwhelmed, where my brain's just not going to put things together in any kind of helpful way.
Mm.
And then being able to try and ask for those things and share those things with others around us, again, in moments where we're perhaps not super overwhelmed. One amazing tool that I highly recommend any neurodivergent person takes a look at is having sort of a proactive burnout plan. And really what that is mm, succession planning for your executive functioning, essentially.
That's so cool. I love that. There's a lot of great one-liners here, Beck, that I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, in business world, I've been thinking about succession planning. So I was thinking this morning, I was like, a burnout plan is kind of just like succession planning for your own brain. I really like that. Um,
yes."
so essentially, though, it's really simple. It is, again, grab a notebook and just write At each stage, I put 3 stages of kind of burnout. So sort of early warning signs, things are getting really shaky now, and kind of full burnout. And then I have, what does this look like for me? What does this feel like for me? So that I can try and pick out the signs and the early warning signs that, oh, okay, I'm not feeling quite right now. So maybe I need to take a look at what strategies I can put in place now before it gets worse. And then what strategies at each stage are really, really helpful. So I then shared that document with my partner, with close friends, so that they could also keep an eye out for any of those signs that things are starting to get a little bit shaky. Because ultimately, like when I'm starting to burn out and my well being is not so good, I'm not the most responsible person to be managing
Mm.
it. Like it's almost like I double down.
Mm.
I don't need anything.
On
I'm all good.
yes, yes, yes.
Which is so silly, but then there's, like, wider kind of, internalized ableism and expectations of society and expectations of self, and so there's a bit of sort of inner work that you've gotta do to try and unpick some of those things and get more gentle with yourself when things do get shaky.
Mm,
But we also need safe spaces to be able to advocate for ourselves. We can, be able to identify all of the things that make us overwhelmed and ask for help. But ultimately, if we don't have a safe space in our school or workplace or at home, then it's really, really difficult for us to ever be able to self advocate, because it's scary to speak up and ask for something that you
mm.
need, especially when you've lived your whole life sort of being fed messages that it's not that loud, it's not that bright, it's not that busy, it's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Get over
And
it.
so,
You'll be fine.
yeah, and so then you think maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe I should just, deal with it, or whatever.
Mm,
And then there's a lot of cases where when you do speak up, people don't listen. And that then, makes it much less likely that you'll speak up again. So I think everybody could contribute to making this better for neurodivergent people, in that when we say, hey, this is really hard for me, just to listen, and respect that and go, you know what, you're the sort of expert on yourself. And if there's something that I can do to make things better for you, why wouldn't I do that? So there's a little bit of sort of being able to speak up yourself is one tool and one strategy, but we need to sort
mm.
of work on making more spaces safer to be able to actually do that.
Self-advocacy is such a big thing, and I'm sure we could actually host another discussion with you back on that whole topic. But are there quick kind of handy tips you think that people can start to do to develop that skill, like, small practices?
I think starting with yourself and trying to sort of listen to your own body and listen to your own kind of fluctuating capacity, and kind of giving yourself the things that you need is probably the hardest and also the best way to start, because you can control yourself but you can't control other people. But it's really hard, like, we're our own worst,
Mm,
enemies sometimes, our own biggest critics, and so just being more gentle and giving ourselves a little bit
mm,
more grace, is something that I think is an ongoing, um, sort of building of a relationship with myself, to be able
mm,
to get to a point where I don't feel like a failure because I am super tired one day and don't get all of the things ticked off that I wanted to. But I try really hard now
mm.
to just be mindful that if things are feeling rocky, then I am going to be able to do less, and that's okay. I might need to sort of, compromise on some things. Like I really love having a super duper clean house, but maybe I won't do a full spring clean every single week. Maybe I'll just break it down and just do a little bit today and then call that success. Maybe just having a shower
Mm,
today is the only goal that I'm going to set for myself. And if I manage to do
mm.
that, then I can call it a successful day. And then really
Mm,
actually holding myself to account for calling that as a successful day, which is like the hardest part, I think. But
that's the hardest bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think as
Yeah.
well, just connecting in with community is really, really important and powerful. I know that whenever things are feeling rocky for me, just jumping on a call with you, Michelle, for an hour or two, at the end, I just go, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, it's okay. I'm okay."
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. But it is right, connecting but it's also, as you say, celebrating like the small wins. I know this week, has been tricky in our household too. And, I had all of these things I was like planning for the week. And you kind of do have to go, well, we were able to do a hangout this afternoon. We're able to do a discussion. You kind of celebrate those small, well, small or big wins or the things that, you've been able to do. So I think that's great. But I suppose when we think about environments, I guess what are the barriers to actually having this kind of system in place where you can celebrate those things? I guess what's the kind of things that you've seen in your experience that, are those barriers?
Yeah, I think I'm incredibly privileged that I have been able to build a life for myself that is a bit more gentle on the neurodivergent being, and I recognize and acknowledge that that's absolutely not accessible to everybody. So that sucks. I mean, it has taken a long time for me to get here, not just because of like, you need money to be able to control your environment. I work for myself, and that makes a really, really big difference. But also just like figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Like simple little things like moving my desk around if I'm finding that something is really, really overwhelming me. If there's a time of day where the light's coming in at a particular time, I can move my desk. So being able to make little kind of changes for yourself is really, really powerful. But it's tricky. I think the people side of things is really the big challenge. So it's a lot easier to change a
Mm,
light bulb or a light fitting than it is to change someone's belief or mindset about how you should show up in the world. And so I hope that over time we will become much more tolerant and accepting of difference and different ways of being. And I think while it's a big systemic issue that doesn't sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say alleviate. That's not quite it, but it doesn't sort of write off our individual
mm,
responsibility, because everyone
mm.
has the power to
Yeah.
be kind, understanding, and to question their sort of instant judgments about what they're observing someone doing or not doing. I always try and look for like not even necessarily the reason why, but just remind myself that I don't know the reason why people are perhaps having a rough time or doing something in a certain way or, not doing something. I always try and
Yeah.
think, what can I do to help that person out? What can I do to make things a bit easier for that person? And we definitely do that or try to do that with our team at FutureTech because our team is neurodivergent. And so instead of sort of going, oh, this person didn't do X, I go, well, what about the process to do X was not clear? What can I do
Mm,
to make things easier for this person? So there are lots of ways of doing that, but a lot of it's just being quite open and honest about the things that you're struggling with and creating that space of safety for people to be able to say, actually, like I didn't understand that. Can you
mm.
help me with that? So yeah, there's
Yeah.
like it's levels. There's so many levels to it. But we inch forward.
It's so complex, right? It's so complex because it kind of almost is about communication and being, having a safe space to communicate. And then there's rejection, and there's, you know, that fear of failure or the ableism that comes in that, people don't realize, either that they have or that, the system itself has. I think it's such a complex topic, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
Mm. Ashley's dropped in a comment in terms of the language around goals, improving social skills versus making a friend. It appears to be about restructuring these goals away from language that implies there's something wrong with me or with the person, and more about finding goals that support the life they're interested in. It's such a beautiful summary of that, that thought you had there, Beck.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that. Sometimes I struggle to get my own thinking out in any kind of cohesive way. So I always appreciate when someone
It's
pulls it
always good when
together.
it's like, yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
But I also think that, there's a
Yeah.
lot of, there's just so many skills that kind of fall underneath goals, and the skills are almost like the car. But the goal is like the destination. And what motivates you to learn how to drive, so to gain the skill, is because you need to get somewhere. And so without the destination, why would someone want to or be motivated to learn how to drive?
Mm,
So yeah, I think we need to sort of stop. It's also belittling. I find it offensive. It's like, oh, I can have big, hairy, audacious goals. I don't need to work
mm,
on social skills as a goal. I find it's almost like the same kind of inspiration porn kind of area where you're sort of giving people with disabilities a big pat on the back for doing things that other people do. And people
mm.
don't like that. I have one of our participants, one of his goals is that he wants to drive around Africa. And I just like, that's
Oh, so
amazing.
cool.
I love that. But think about all of the things that you need to be able to do to drive around Africa. So you need to be able to sit down and plan it out, apply for visas. You need to, make sure that you have all the resources, make sure that you know how to find your way around. You need to make sure that, you can feed yourself. So there are all of these kind of skills underneath
Yeah.
that goal. But
Mm.
the goal makes developing those skills meaningful. So yeah,
And fun,
it's
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And when you think about this in terms of workplaces and even community organizations, how do we go from like awareness, like people are aware, okay, we need to do more, or people are aware that well-being is important, but how do we move beyond just awareness to really genuine, sustained kind of support? We had this sort of similar conversation in our one of our hangouts about diversity, but I guess in terms of well-being, how do we actually start to do that in organizations?
Yeah, I think starting with the environment is always going to be a little bit easier because there are things that we can, I mean, this was like building an entirely new building is not that easy, but I would argue that it's probably easier than changing someone's belief system. Still, I think asking people as well, like what's helpful for you? Like, what do you find really overwhelming? Having ways that people can share those kind of yucks and yums with colleagues, with managers. Having managers share them too to make it sort of safe for everyone else too, because it can be quite vulnerable. One thing that I'm always harping on about is training and having lived experience training. So you're not only kind of getting a much more nuanced perspective of neurodiversity and what might actually be going on for people instead of just sort of the surface. What does this look like? It's like, well, what's actually going on for you? Because that's often a different sort of question and response. Um, Plus, you get to support neurodivergent people's economic well-being as well, because if people are hiring and training people to go out and talk to people about neurodivergence, then that is also helping them in terms of
Mm,
financial well-being, which is definitely a platform to be able to achieve other types of well-being. Like, you need enough money to be able to survive, and we know that employment rates in our community are just unacceptable. To be honest, it's not
yeah.
okay. So prioritizing that lived experience is really, really important, really key. And
Mm,
then there's just like there's simple things like making things make more sense, being clear with communication, not always assuming good intent. I think this is something that we don't do very well as humans. Instead of
Mm,
kind of jumping to offense, or that was rude, or that was not professional, kind of
mhm.
thinking, well, that person probably really cares.
Yeah.
We all we're seeing research coming out that autistic people are much more likely to speak up about workplace issues. So things that are kind of going wrong within a workplace, autistic people are much more likely to sort of speak up about those things, which is interesting
Mm,
because it's not that doesn't necessarily translate to if there's social dynamics,
yeah.
because autistic people kind of are coming into workplaces and they're like, I am here to do a good job. That's sort of the
Mm,
mentality. And doing a good job means speaking up about things that are not going so well.
mm,
I've gotten myself into
mm.
many a trouble in many a workplace because I have spoken up about things that I think could be improved. People often don't like it when you do that, but why?
Yes.
I'm just trying to be helpful.
Yeah, I've been in the same position too, and I think it's almost like that sense of justice, or you want to do the right thing.
Definitely. It's the canary in the coal mine, right? I think we're quite good at seeing where things might go wrong. And so, yeah, trying to listen to that and appreciate it as well and use it, because
Yeah.
so many autistic people's skills and strengths are so underutilized. It's unbelievable. So trying to help people find what those strengths are and carving out opportunities for them to do that
Mm,
really, really helps you feel a sense of achievement. It helps you feel like the expert for once, and that all feeds back into well-being.
it does. Ashley has a question here. I'm interested to know if you have any trouble doing scary, overwhelming things in your work and staying regulated enough to function. And how do you manage these sorts of dynamics with deadlines and external pressures? So, how do you manage to balance all that? And Beck is a bit of a superstar, so I'm sure she'll tell us what her secrets are.
Yeah, I think that, so the part around how to do scary things, yes, I've had to do lots and lots of things that are very, very scary and that have taken a long time to sort of not be scared of. Like speaking in front of people, I used to physically like vibrate whenever I had to get up and talk in front of people because my body just took over. And so it was super frustrating. And for me, the key to being able to get through some of those things was having that real tie to purpose. So the reason that I was doing it was because I wanted to support like future tech and autistic young people. And so that is sort of like my anchor, has made a lot of things a lot less scary, or not necessarily a lot less scary, just that I knew I had to do it anyway. And the more you do scary things, the less scary they become. I also think monotropism is really, really interesting in using interests to sort of dampen out some of those difficult sensory or social kind of barriers, I suppose. So I know that for a lot of our young people at FutureTech, for example, they might find it really, really hard to go to a crowded place. But if the young person loves Billie Eilish and wants to go to a Billie Eilish concert,
Yes.
usually, they're I mean, yes, you're gonna have to plan for the fact that you're gonna be exhausted the next day, maybe for longer, but that sort of interest at the end helps to almost mute somewhat some of the other really challenging sensory things. Another story that I often talk about in relation to this is when I went on a cruise with a friend of mine. So I'm obsessed with the ocean, love the ocean, love sea creatures. I've always wanted to scuba dive. It's such a cool thing. My uncle went and he scuba dived all over the world. I think in the Red Sea, where there's like five of the seven deadliest sharks in the world, something along those lines. And I love sharks. So it was always a thing that I wanted to do. But the equipment, so the breathing, even snorkeling, breathing
Oh, yeah.
differently
Mm.
sends my brain into thinking that I'm having a panic attack. So I have a panic attack. And in the lead up to this cruise with my friend who is a free diver, she's like a fish, no fear. She's all the ADHD, none of the sort of autism. So just like ready to dive right into absolutely everything. It's incredible. She makes me brave, actually. And we were practicing and practicing and practicing. Every time I got in the water, I had a panic attack, get back out again. And finally, when we got off on one of the islands, she got into the water, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And she was like, "There's a turtle here." And well, I never, like, just like so fast.
Wow.
Because for me, I was like,
Yeah.
well, the thing on the other end is so important that I can kind of dampen out some of the unpleasantness, and it's worth it. It's not just doing it because society expects it of me. It's doing it because it genuinely gives me joy. And then we
Mm.
circle all the way back to joy. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question. I feel like I went on a big tangent there.
I think no, I think it's great and a great example of overcoming the scary, but also with having that sort of focus on that, that interest, that spin, like actually it motivates people. And I think that's a great example to tie together what we talked about earlier around being focused on what is your interest so that you can use it in well-being and in, finding let me see. Yeah. Okay, that was good. I thought there was another question there, but so when I know you sort of we talked briefly before we started, and we both said yes. Sometimes our well-being strategies drop off when we're really busy. But do you have like a personal go-to strategy or tool that supports your own personal well-being?
Yes. So executive functioning supports are huge. I think too often we spend a lot of time trying to get better at executive functioning instead of just putting things in place that can do it instead of us, so that we have more brain space to be able to deep dive into our special interests. It's just like I'm much better over here. I don't need to spend time over here. So having things like a really organized, color coded calendar is huge. Whenever I'm feeling really, really overwhelmed, more often than not, it's because I feel disorganized. And because there's too much going on up in my head, and I can't make sense of any of it. So getting it out of my head, it's like I'm delegating, delegating needing to keep it up here. And that really alleviates that pressure. Because I feel like it feels like a physical kind of pressure, like my brain is being squeezed when I'm feeling that way. So helping to just kind of get it somewhere else that can sort of maintain that memory better than I can. It's
Mm.
really, really helpful. So that's usually my first go to. Exercise is a really big one for me, moving my body.
Mhm.
Sometimes I actually just like stand up and just like wiggle around for a few minutes,
Love
or I'll
it.
put some music on and I'll just like dance around. Just little things, really little things, and finding what those little things are for you. So
Mm.
sometimes I know that I need to like get really deep into music if I'm feeling really kind of like lots of energy built up, because music helps me to feel through things where I can't really do it without that. Sometimes I'll just schedule myself a good cry. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's
Ah,
actually
it's so
really
good.
nice. It's really nice. And like you feel it, you're like, I am overdue a
Mm.
good cry. So I just put on a really sad movie or really sad
Ah,
music, and I just feel through it. And then I feel so much better afterwards. Um,
so good.
yeah,
So good.
also, another one that I really like is this idea of momentary mindfulness. So I I can't tell you how many people have told me to meditate in my life, and I
Ah,
just can't.
yes. I can.
Can't do right? So it's just like it's actually damaging to my well-being, if anything else. Because I'm sitting
Yes.
there, I'm getting more and more frustrated at the fact that it's not helping, and thinking about all of
Yes.
the other things that I should be
The
doing with
things
that
that we need
time,
to do.
right?
Yes.
So for me, that's not really helpful. But what is really helpful is just taking like a micro moment to notice something. So often it's, the grass is really, really green today. move on. Like, it's just a really
Mm,
quick way to get yourself back into your body and just reset a little bit, because sometimes I
mm,
think when I'm
mhm.
getting overwhelmed, it's almost like my body and me become detached.
Yeah,
And so just
yeah,
finding a way to
I get
just kind
that.
of get back in. Yeah. Weighted
Mm,
blankets also very, very amazing. Highly recommend a weighted blanket. Everyone should have one.
love that. Someone in the chat says, "Hi, Beck, this is Henry."
Oh, hi,
Maybe one
Henry.
of your future step people. Yeah. Okay. So I guess like all of those strategies are great, but how do you balance like that kind of having time to rest, recover, employ these strategies with the demands of life? How do you kind of schedule it, if you like?
Yeah, look, it's not like I don't think that I'm a gold standard to sort of I do my best. And I think we all do it. And I think ultimately it's being gentle with ourselves when we don't get it perfectly right every time. I think you need to sort of push yourself to your limit to figure out where your limits actually are. And so sometimes it's going,
Mm,
okay, this week I really overcommitted myself. I'm going to need to be more mindful of that in the future. And learn how to say I'm really bad at saying no to things, but learning how to say no sometimes is okay. Also having people around you who will do that for you is really helpful, or just remind you that it is an option. So there's a lot of occasions where my partner will be going out to socialize with his friends. And he'll be like, "You're invited, but I know you're going to hate it. So maybe not."
mm,
Like, it's really nice to know that I'm invited, but actually having the permission just to not do the thing. Otherwise, I would just be like, "Oh, I have to. I have to go." Like, I wouldn't even think to myself that there's the option not to. So having other people look out for me is really, really helpful. And yeah, just really trying hard to be deliberate about how you're managing things, because it's when you sort of are not being careful about how you're allocating energy and resource and time. It's almost like managing money, and it's hard work. It takes a lot of like energy just to be able to manage your energy, which is ridiculous. But that's sort of one of the things about being autistic, neurodivergent in a world that is
mm,
often not designed for us, is that we have to work
mm,
so much harder just to kind of do the things that everybody else finds really, really easy. So part of it is
mm.
trying to manage my own well-being, but also part of it is trying to leave the world a little bit more gentle and inclusive for neurodivergent people to come, because that then makes me take better care of myself, because I have work to do and I need to be okay and be well to be able to keep doing the work. So it all kind of comes back around. And so that purpose is really, really important. And again, that comes back to the goal, right? It's not just about working on my well-being skills. It's actually, well, I need to be well so that I can do this thing up here that's really, really important to me.
I love that. I love that sort of goal of that sort of journey, I guess. Ashley has a question. I hear that well-being is strongly linked to our interest as autistic people. I'm curious if you have always had a good understanding of your interest or interests, or have there been times when you really didn't know what brought you joy? That's a great question, Ashley. What do you
That
think,
is a
Beck?
really great question. Um, I I think I've always known that I wanted to do something that made the world better. And I think that was always kind of like my interest, which sort of like the way in which I go about it has shifted over time. But I've always felt like it was really important to me to leave the world in a slightly better place than what I found it. My interests have changed over time, but that kind of core, I want to be doing something with my life that is going to make things better for other people, has been quite a solid one. I think I'm really lucky in that developed my special interest in autism and neurodivergence at a young age because my little brother was diagnosed as a child. I had to wait until I was 26, which is hilarious because I thought myself quite the expert too. I was like, I know everything about neurodivergence and just had no inkling that
Yes.
so that's funny. My brother did though. He said duh when I told him, which was like, thanks, Sam. It's actually Sam's birthday today.
Oh,
He
happy birthday, Sam.
yeah, I almost forgot, which is terrible. Gosh, just that's why we need things in the calendar. So yeah, I think the interest is that there's always an interest there. It's just that sometimes you need a little bit of guidance or help to find it or to find it and then sort of branch it out into other realms. So I almost learn everything through the context of my interest. That's what motivates me.
Mm,
So I can learn about, Bayesian theorem and math, which I can attest, like I am not good with math. In fact, I usually would avoid it if I could, but because there's a link between the way that we explain things like habituation and the sensory experience of neurodivergent people and the Bayesian theorem, I was able to learn this mathematical theory because it was contextually important to the interest and I could learn it through that sort of perspective. So
mhm,
I do think the interests are so important for
mm,
well-being for neurodivergent people. If like I think probably one of the most important things
mm,
because yeah, I just get so much joy from it and it's so healing. So yeah, anyway, you
mm,
can sort of support people to find those interests. Sometimes it's just really, really noticing and observing and going, I remember you said this about that, or it looked like you really enjoyed X. Do you think that you would like to do
mm,
more of that? A lot of the conversations I have with the young people that I support, it's not like I ask them, what's your interest? And they're able to go, oh, my interest is, I mean, some of them can for sure, but a lot of the time it's just being really, really observant and trying to notice and point things out that you're noticing um, in,
mm.
in, in them or yourself as well.
I think it's a great question, Ashley, and great response, Beck. I also wonder, you know, particularly for those of us who are delayed diagnosis, that you almost lose your joy along the way through various traumatic experiences and school and life and masking, that actually it sort of comes to a point where you go, well, what does bring me joy? And you almost have to do that reflection or, um, you know, kind of that plan, I guess, for understanding, you know, your interests and what brings you joy. And, it is great if you've got people around you that can help you do that. Coming along to these discussions sometimes gives you that sort of spark of kind of curiosity to go and unpack that. And I certainly, yeah, every time I talk to you, Beck, I learn some new things. I love the, uh, you know, that kind of proactive burnout plan and getting people to look out for the signs. I think that's like a super helpful piece of advice for our community. And what was the other one? The succession plan for your executive dysfunction.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I think we'll have to replay that one over and over again. Love, 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 love. So we are almost coming to time. So one kind of light question to wrap us up is, what's one small thing you do every day that brings you joy?
Well, I feel like I sort of touched on a little bit. I'll usually just have a cuddle with my dog, or try and find like a documentary or a video about something that I find really interesting. And try and spark a new interest
Love it.
area even, which is really, really it's always fun. But
Love
yeah,
it.
I think just having a cuddle with the doggo, it always helps.
I love it.
Sometimes I just like just having a nap as well is like really, really healing.
Nice. Feel free, anyone, to pop your joy moment in the chat as we wrap up. My moment that I always, after talking to you, Beck, I always think, oh gosh, we have very similar perspectives on things and we like similar things. I also like at the end of the day having a cuddle with the puppy dog on the couch in the dark, watching some kind of documentary, not so much on penguins, but
I
on
know.
other documentary. I know we've got to have some differences to talk about. Naps are joy. Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing that. And anytime I get sunshine, yes, I agree, Karen. We could definitely use some sunshine here in Australia at the moment, coming at the end of winter, the start of spring. So, well, that is a wrap. Thank you so much, Beck, for your time and fantastic insights. Yep, love every minute of our conversations. For the audience, we do have a couple of other Divergent discussions coming up in September. We're going to be talking to Hasib about what ADHD has taught him in life and work. We also have my favourite Joe talking about strengths in neurodivergent folks. So that will be a good one. Perhaps unpacking, strengths and maybe how they link to your interests and joy. And then we have Carla coming, our resident psychologist here at Caboose. She's coming to talk about ableism, which is something that a lot of people don't know a lot about. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I know a number of our community are too. So you can get those tickets through the Caboose app or Humanitix, or head over to our website. You'll find all the links there. And for those who have registered today who haven't been able to join, we'll be getting a replay. So thank you, Beck, so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always such a joy. Like, I feel better.
Yeah, me too. Surprisingly enough, that long day and the headache has subsided just chatting about all the fun things. So I do love a good conversation.
Me
and
too.
we have a thank you there from Henry.
Oh, thank you,
and
Henry.
Sylvia.
Thanks, Lou.
And Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks,
Okay.
Sylvia.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.